Hello everyone. As you'll know from having done this in previous years, in March of this year you're going to be asked to choose one from two electives to study at level 6 next year on your course Sport, Culture and Society. This screencast is a very brief, short overview of the modules that are on offer and what to expect from each of those respective modules. Okay, so very briefly, because like I said you've done this before, on March the 3rd this year you're going to get an email telling you how to choose your electives online. And that email will consist of something that tells you you need to go to your student record, which can be found at the top of Blackboard there. You need to log in to that student record using the username and password. Go to the My Modules tab of your student record and follow the process therein. The process is very easy, it's very straightforward and shouldn't be too much of a hassle. You need to bear in mind that you've got 3 weeks this year to complete that selection. The university staff will keep prompting you to complete that process. If you don't do it within those allocated 3 weeks, you will be given a module which has spaces left on it rather than you being allowed to choose it, which of course isn't ideal. So there are 4 core modules next year: Sport Stars and Celebrity Culture, Media Discourses and Sport Journalism, Crime, Deviance and Sport, and of course the one you're all looking forward to, the Project module, which, as you'll see from the brackets here, is worth 40 credits, or in other words 2 modules worth of marks. There are also, as with previous years, 2 electives that you can choose from, and you must choose one of these 2 electives. The first is Community Practice 2 and the second is Social Perceptions and Leisure. So Community Practice 2 follows on from the kinds of things that students will have been talking about on Community Practice 1. However, please bear in mind that this module does not, as an elective, exclude those students who may not, for whatever reason, have chosen Community Practice 1. So what this module does is it really looks at the philosophies and the concepts that might have underpinned Hugh Butcher's approach to critical community practice. So we start off by looking at the concept of cultural intermediaries, which is just effectively a posh way of saying that there are certain people in community development that have the skills to bridge the divide between different and often very complex and contrasting cultures. So it's really important from a community practitioner's perspective to understand what things like respect and what things like empathy can bring to the community practitioner role. We'll also look at Gramsci's notion of hegemony, try and understand why it is, for example, that the community practice approach perhaps hasn't gained as much respect and as much weight as more orthodox sport and community development approaches, and of course what kind of tools Gramsci can give us to help us to improve our approach and make it more mainstream. We look at our role as educators, as critical educators, and we look at some innovative tools that can be used to engage people in communities in new and contemporary ways. So we'll look at, for example, the role of Lego and the kind of things that are being done in local communities to engage people by building Lego models to express their identities, and what this can really offer us as a political tool and as a form, in many ways, political action. We look at community conflict, because obviously this is one of the most important things as far as community practice is concerned. International development and the growing role of community practice within the international community. We look at the role of women, conceptualise that through feminist understandings of community practice, and we end by discussing whether or not, given some of the wider criticisms of sport as a tool for engagement, sport is in fact the right thing to be using as to encourage things like democracy and inclusion, or whether community arts and things like poetry and drawing and music might be a better way of engaging those same communities. Okay, as I suggested, the second option is social perceptions of leisure, and this module is really orientated around what are widely known as the 5 big leisure pursuits that have remained big leisure pursuits throughout history. And those 5 leisure pursuits, as you'll see here, are gambling, sex, alcohol, television, and holidays. So, take gambling for instance. One of the things you'll discuss on this module is how gambling has gone from a quintessentially working class leisure pursuit, which took place largely in places like the bookies or via the pools, to something that has become a massive industry in terms of its online presence. So you'll often get lots of women now, for instance, playing bingo online during the day. In this module, you'll ask questions about why it is that change has happened, and what does that tell us about both changing patterns of leisure, but also the nature of things like gender and class. You'll look at things like sex and how porn, for instance, may have changed people's leisure habits and changed their orientation towards sex. Alcohol. One of the things that is often discussed here is how alcohol, as a hub around which people often orientate their leisure, has changed beyond all recognition. So what was once something that people would consume in the comfort of their own home has now become something, for example, that is used to promote 18 to 30s holiday, which some of you may or may not have been on, and how that culture of the 18 to 30s holiday again has changed our orientation towards leisure, but also towards things like escape and liminality. So, as I suggested, you both look at the historical antecedents of leisure, if you like, but also chart how this has changed through, as you'll see here, things like abnormal and extreme leisure, what Bauman describes as liquid leisure, and how, in many cases, this might lead us to question what leisure really means. Okay, so that's really about it as far as the modules are concerned. If you want to access any information on any of the modules that I've just talked about, you can go to the course organisation Blackboard site. All you have to do, as you'll see here, is click on the module selection tab on the left hand side. Once you've clicked on that, you will have access to all of the module descriptors I just talked about and much more that should help you to make your decision.